The year was 669 AD, and Constantine IV was in power since the sudden death of his father in Sicily a year before. After having quelled the usurpation of Mezezius, the troops located there returned to Anatolia. The Arabs took advantage of this fact to pillage the island again. Berber tribes started to convert to Islam, providing useful alliances for the caliphate. Marching west, a Muslim army under Uqba ibn Nafi consolidated control over Fezzan and Tripolitania before thrusting north to the Exarchate itself. There, it established the town of Kairouan as a permanent base for future operations. The Arab strikes towards the capital continued, and in 670 they captured the strategic peninsula of Cyzicus, a military base which was dangerously close to Constantinople. A new steppe tribe was on the rise in the Pontic steppe, the Khazars. Soon they came into conflict with the Bulgars, who they defeated. Under their leader Aspero, parts of the Bulgar people fled west. They arrived on the Danube and took control of its delta, coming into conflict with the empire. Around that time, and according to tradition, a man named Callinicus of Heliopolis migrated from Syria to the empire. He brought with him the formula of a new secret weapon he perfected, Greek fire. From now on, the government would equip its navy with the weapon and use it to great effect. To preserve the technological edge, any details about it would be kept a state secret. This invention was much welcome because, while the fighting in Anatolia continued, naval operations intensified. Constantine sent his fleet to raid the coast of Egypt. Despite this, the Arabs attacked along the coast, establishing military bases in the strategic locations of Cilicia, Lycia, Ionia, and the island of Rhodes. After this build-up, the Muslims invaded the Sea of Marmara in force. They launched attacks and clashed with the imperial army and navy in the area. Then, they took shelter in their base of Cyzicus to spend the winter and resume the operations the following years. That a full siege of Constantinople was attempted is uncertain, but the capital was definitely under threat. In 675, it was the turn of the island of Crete to be attacked and occupied. As if the Arab blockade was not enough, the emperor received word that a vassal Slavic chieftain named Perbundus plotted to take Thessalonica for himself. Taking no chances, Constantine had him arrested and later executed. This backfired, as several enraged Slavic tribes now actually besieged Thessalonica. They organized a blockade and ravaged the nearby lands. Soon, a famine afflicted the city. Unfortunately, the intense fighting around Constantinople meant that few resources could be spared. Thessalonica was on its own. Since the emperor's constant campaign in Italy, more territories were lost to the Lombards in the south. Later on, some sort of peace agreement was reached. Muawiyah's son, Yazid, crossed Anatolia with reinforcements. Concurrently, raids around the Sea of Marmara intensified. Constantine now decided to make a decisive move and launched a naval counteroffensive. In Greece, battling escalated as well with renewed Slavic assaults on Thessalonica. The defenders stood up courageously, while shipments of food allowed them to continue the resistance. 23 years after the Battle of the Masts, the navies of the Empire and the Caliphate met again off the coast of Lycia. This time, the Romans and their Greek fire shattered the enemy fleet. Pushing the initiative, a force landed in Syria itself, just as Christian rebels called the Mardites descended from their mountains to pillage the region. Meanwhile, the main Roman army chased down the Muslim forces from Anatolia. Once the main threat was lifted, Constantine immediately gathered his forces and rushed west to relieve Thessalonica from both land and sea. The Slavs were crushed and abandoned the siege, leaving the Thessalonians free to reoccupy their lands around the city. With such a resurgence of imperial power, Avar and Slavic embassies arrived to congratulate the emperor. With the military situation stabilized, Constantine made it clear that he wanted to reconcile with the papacy. His great-grandfather, Heraclius, had instigated the doctrine of monothelitism to find common ground with the former imperial subjects of Syria and Egypt. His father, Constans, carried the torch but faced backlash from Africa and Italy. Now, the emperor wrote to the Pope to request a religious council to settle the debate once and for all. Seemingly, Muslim forces had taken advantage of the busy Roman state in Anatolia to attack again in Africa. There, a powerful Berber king named Caecilius might have converted to Islam and submitted to the caliphate for a time. Muawiyah's massive and costly assault on Constantinople had failed, and Constantine had exploited his victory decisively. In the ensuing peace treaty, the caliphate paid a tribute of gold, horses and slaves, while the remaining military bases along the Anatolian coast were evacuated. It was now time to deal with the Bulgars. The emperor and his army marched north along the coast until they encountered the invaders in the Danube Delta. The Bulgars were in a strong defensive position and the Romans could not break their lines. At some point, an illness convinced the emperor to leave the battlefield and to take shelter further south. When the troops learned of the emperor's departure, however, discipline broke down and they retreated as well. The Bulgars took the opportunity to attack, inflicting many casualties during the pursuit. Despite such a defeat, Constantine announced the deposition of his two brothers, Heraclius and Tiberius, who until now were official co-emperors. He did this to secure the succession of his son, Justinian. However, the troops of the Anatolican theme revolted and marched west to enforce their demands. They pushed the emperor to reinstate his two brothers on the basis that 3 emperors should rule to imitate the Holy Trinity. Constantine went for the safe option and conceded to their demands, but took care to have the ringleaders executed. The awaited Sixth Ecumenical Council, the third to take place in Constantinople itself, began on November 7, 680. Every sees of the Pentarchy were present, but with different degrees of involvement. The emperor himself participated in the debate sessions. Due to the resistance of the monothelite partisans, the council continued well into the following year. Constantine did not wish for a prolonged conflict against the Bulgars. That is why both sides agreed for a peace settlement. Constantinople recognized the establishment of a Bulgar state beyond the Balkan mountains. To adapt to this new threat, a theme was created in Thrace. On September 16, 681, the Ecumenical Council closed, with the last of 18 sessions involving more than 150 participants. It condemned monothelitism and declared a posthumous anathema to its main promoters. These included Sergius and Pyrrhus of Constantinople, Cyrus of Alexandria, and Pope Honorius. Having defended heretical doctrine during the council, the current Patriarch of Antioch, Macarius, was deposed. A strict Chalcedonian position was reaffirmed, and communion was restored with Rome. Constantine deposed his two brothers again, this time for good. As a now established Byzantine practice, both got their nose slit to make them unsuited to rule. the succession of the young Justinian was secured. The Muslim governor of Africa, Ugba, launched a great expedition through North African lands, supposedly reaching the Atlantic coast. Enduring disrespect from the Arabs, King Caecilius rebelled. On the way back, he combined his forces with local Roman troops, ambushed and destroyed Ugba's contingent. Caecilius took Kairouan and expelled the Arabs from Africa. Further negotiations between the emperor and the papacy led to some concessions. The Archbishopric of Ravenna was placed under the authority of Rome. Not only that, but from now on, papal election would no longer need an approval from the emperor. The successors of Muawiyah faced opposition to their dynastic rule, plunging the caliphate into a second civil war. Caucasian princes started defecting to the empire while Constantine took the offensive. The army reconquered Cilicia, the navy attacked coastal cities in Palestine, and Mahdite rebels raided Syria. In a precarious position, Abd al-Malik had to increase the tribute to the empire to 1,000 gold coins, 1 horse and 1 slave every day. Having revived imperial strength, Constantine died of dysentery at about 35 years old. The 16-year-old Justinian thus ascended to the throne and immediately set out to push Roman ascendancy even further. Appointed by the emperor, General Leontius entered Armenia, established imperial dominion there, and pushed as far as the Caspian Sea. Further negotiations occurred and a new peace treaty was concluded with the Umayyads. The tribute would continue as usual. The two states would share the revenues of Cyprus, Armenia, and Iberia. Lastly, the troublesome Mahdite rebels were to be relocated in Roman lands. They were settled in the Carabisianoi military district to be enlisted in the navy as rowers. The latter district was split in 2 parts, as the area of mainland Greece was detached to create the theme of Hellas. Justinian gathered a strike force in Thrace and attacked the Slavs located between Constantinople and Thessalonica. The area was secured, many Slavs were resettled in depopulated regions of Anatolia and integrated into the military structure of the empire. During this campaign also occurred clashes with the Bulgars. In Africa, the Arabs got their revenge, defeating and killing Caecilius. They recaptured and garrisoned Kairouan. On the way back, however, the Muslim force of Zawahir was destroyed by imperial troops. When in 688, tribute from the Caliphate did not arrive, the Romans attacked again, capturing Antioch. The treaty was renegotiated. Armenia and Iberia were now fully under the control of the empire, and the remaining Mahdite rebels who still pillaged Syria were transferred to Roman lands. Justinian had a firm, hands-on approach to managing the empire. Whether it violated the peace treaty with the Caliphate or not, he organized a population transfer from Cyprus to Cyzicus to strengthen its tax base. These imperial policies, the displacements of Mahdite, Slavic, and Cypriot communities, and the relative peace in Anatolia since Constantine IV actually brought results and strengthened the empire. Around that time, Justinian brought his own touch to the coinage by adding representation of Christ to newly minted pieces. This decision displeased the Muslims in the Caliphate, who still used imperial-styled currencies. Justinian had accepted the results of the council held under his father, but he decided to dig further into church matters. He convened his own religious gathering, the so-called Quinisext Council. While the validity of the previous ecumenical canons was confirmed and heretical sects were condemned, this meeting delved mostly into clerical discipline. The religious practices of the East and the West had differed over time, and this council aimed at a proper settlement. The attendants were mostly Eastern bishops, making the 102 edicted canons a direct attack on the Western clergy. Canon 36 in particular downplayed the authority of Rome to make it equal to Constantinople. Pope Sergius denied the council's validity. In turn, the emperor ordered Sergius to be arrested, but the troops in Italy refused. A new round of political conflict with the papacy had begun. Be it tensions from coinage reforms, treaty violations, the need to attack before the caliphate regained its full strength, or even a direct Arab aggression, war resumed between the two powers. A decisive contest took place at Sebastopolis. The battle was indecisive until a large Slavic contingent defected from the imperial army. The now clearly outnumbered Romans retreated, leaving victory to the Umayyads. An unreliable account writes that a furious Justinian massacred Slavic settlers in Bithynia. The consequence of the defeat was the loss of the ever-contested Armenia. These wars, but also building projects such as an extension of the imperial palace, were expensive, and indeed taxation under Justinian II was oppressive. Because of that, the emperor and his Sacellarius, Stephen the Persian, acquired a reputation of extortion and violence. A conspiracy formed under the leadership of Leontius, the disgraced strategos of the Battle of Sebastopolis, who now commanded the theme of Hellas. Support against the unpopular emperor was easy to find. In 695, the coup unfolded. A rebellion ignited in the capital, and Leontius took power. While his hated officials were burned alive, Justinian avoided death, had his nose slit, and was exiled to Chersonesus. The last 2 decades had allowed a resurgence of imperial power. Constantine IV had successfully defended Constantinople, defeated the Caliphate, pacified the Slavs, and healed a major schism with the papacy. Only his failure against the Bulgars kept his reign from being an immaculate success. Justinian II continued in his father's footsteps, bringing military victories and engaging in religious debates. By the second half of his reign, however, his impatience and harshness backfired. With his deposition ended the legitimacy brought upon by the Heraclean line. While political strife loomed on the horizon, the Caliphate had reunited and was now ready to go on the offensive again.